choose carefully how you actually manage your online persona. That would actually help from a personal branding point of view. So I would say it's very, very important for everyone. Never post something that you won't tell your mother or your priest. This is actually a famous quote on the internet quite some time ago. Don't get stuck with only one saying, मुझे long term brand building ही करना है, I won't do viral, और मुझे viral ही करना है, मुझे long term brand building नहीं करना है. That's a problem. Have a mix, it will be good. I don't think brands can have personality by definition. Brands can have personality based on what audience think about it, which is very different from brands to be defined with a personality.
Hello, I'm Manu Prasad, and you're welcome to Brandwidth, a full stack marketing podcast where we speak to people from across the brand and marketing ecosystem, from VCs and founders to CMOs and heads of marketing to agency folks and specialists in different marketing. Brandwidth is produced by Spooler, your end-to-end podcast production partner, which means all you need to do is get a guest and start talking. Today, we chat with Karthik Srinivasan on personal brand and his commentary on advertising and communication. यहाँ से 50 कोस दूर गांव में जब एजेंसी ऐड बनाता है तो क्लाइंट कहता है बेटा सोच के नहीं तो कार्तिक लिंक्डइन पोस्ट लिखेगा. Now, before you cancel me out for ignoring regional languages, I'll try to balance that with an equally iconic dialogue from down south on why the client says so. So it's because your reach and influence is so far gone now that ninge oru thadave sonna nooru thadave sonna maari. With that collie intro, welcoming our guest in the 4th episode of Brandwidth, Karthik Srinivasan, who really requires no introduction in this domain because naam to definitely suna hoga. Karthik, welcome to Brandwidth.
Thank you so much for that filmy intro. I didn't expect that at all.
Super. So, two broad areas that I'd really want to cover in this conversation because it's very rarely that I have somebody who is an absolute, undoubted expert in the overall thing, which is the personal brand. Right? To me, it is absolutely fascinating how you have built this influence and reach. Some of it even outside of the marketing ecosystem, right? And that is without nepotism, without being a celeb, without being a CEO, without being a politician, any of this. You have literally written the book on it, right? And the second is related to that because I feel there has been a huge component in your personal brand building, which is the advertising and communication commentary. And a few recent examples where we had either similar, parallel, or differing POVs so that we can dig these things a little bit deeper than we normally do. So
Sure.
before that, can you give us a very quick summary of your overall professional experience? You've been on the agency side, I know. You've been on the client side, and now you are what they call a solopreneur, like me. So give us a bit of dope on that.
So, as you said, the agency side, yes. But before agency side, I was in corporate communications, which is not most communications professional choose for their first job. First job is usually either in the PR agency or an ad agency. Then it becomes, like you're aspiring more to join the client side because you've seen the clients wield so much power. And then from agency, you want to move to the client side. So I was the opposite, actually. I started with the client side .com. I've seen enough power being wielded quite pointlessly. And I said, this is like a horse. You see only one industry domain, one category, one brand. Let's see more. And I moved to the agency. So, and it's actually a very good decision that I did. After about 7 years of being in the Corpcom side, I moved to the PR agency side. It was fantastic. I totally loved it. Which made me look at things like a digital agency like Edelman and then eventually an ad agency like Ogilvy. But in between, there's Flipkart also. But having said that, I've done most of what most professionals would have done in the last 20 years of sorts. I would also say right person at the right time because 2007, 8, 9 were the time when social media was getting prominent in India after having been prominent in the US for 2 years as a lead time. And then everybody who was in the comm space was actively looking at how to utilize this powerful tool for either corporate communications, advertising, public relations, etc. So I've done that for quite some time across all facets. And then in 2018, I said, this traffic, I can't take it anymore. I'll just do things on my own. Jo hoga dekha jayega type. So now it's just me and my GST, very happy with each other. That's it.
Beautiful. Yeah, so that's one more victim of Bangalore traffic, but I think it's a net positive for humanity, so I won't really complain about it. All right, so I remember one conversation a while back. I think it's quite a while back where, I think we were talking about generally, jobs and clients and all of that. And I was saying that practically every one of my jobs have been referrals. And you at that point had already started consulting. And you said 90% of my clients are people who don't know me from Adam or the other way. And a lot of this is based on the personal brand that you have built over time. How long did you really prep for that?
So I think I've been actively, consciously prepping for it only from 2015. Prior to that, I've just had a vocal presence on all platforms. And I always thought, why are everybody wasting time on social media? Why are they not doing something useful with it? Because nobody teaches social media to anybody, and nobody even takes social media seriously from that point of view, saying, what is that to teach? You look at each other and start posting stuff. Basically, that's what everybody does. And on Twitter, we started with posting our cat photos and breakfast photos. We still put our breakfast photo, of course. So that's the only thing that we have done. But I thought, if you give the power to talk to the entire world, potentially to a normal one single person, it should count for something a lot more powerful than just thinking about it as saying posting cat photos, right? It has to be, it's almost like a megaphone to the world. So you need to, the fact is, you can also use it in a powerful manner if you're not just thinking about it as a casual channel for things like this at all. And there is one anecdote that I generally give in my corporate branding, corporate and professional branding workshops actually that I do. There was actually a person at NDTV. This was previous NDTV without Adani, the back in the NDTV kind of stuff. And he was actually a behind the scenes guy who used to manage the mic and all the technical equipment in the behind the scenes, not in front of the camera. And he had a problem with Vodafone. Like all other people who have a problem with Vodafone, which is quite normal. He had a problem with Vodafone and he complained to them by calling them, but he couldn't get the number at all because there is a problem with Vodafone. And incoming calls didn't come at all. So he apparently had a problem and he was wondering how to get this solved. How Vodafone kuch to karna hai mujhe. And then he just complained about it to the people he works with in office. One of them happens to have 2 million followers at that time. That is Barkadat. So she was one of his 10 followers on Twitter. And somebody had told him saying, Twitter pe jaake complain karo na, wo log immediately answer kar lenge types, etc. So he went and tweeted. Nobody saw it for 2 days or something. Nobody saw it at all completely, including Vodafone, which was tagged in it. Barkadat looked at it after he complained to him and saying, come on, this guy works with the poor guy, he's having problem. She retweeted it. So from 10, it went to 2 million plus 10 people. And then within about half an hour, Vodafone saying, Bapre, please don't do anything. We will sort it out by today evening itself. And they sorted it actually. So it's not the number of followers that really matter at all. It's the network effect that can matter. Of course, not everybody can get 10 plus 2 million, but that's the potential of social media. So somebody has to teach how can you use this tool in a powerful manner. And there is nothing at all. Nobody even cares about that at all. So I thought, kuch to karna padega. And that's when I started taking it seriously, saying whatever I share, let it be one useful to me and let it be useful to an audience. And when I say useful, it's very subjective because I don't know what is useful to what kind of audience at all. But as much as possible, I put a lot of thought into it, like going to the stage and talking to people kind of stuff. So that I've been doing from 2008 onwards, literally, as soon as I joined Twitter. But consciously, 2015, say, I've been doing it slightly more thoughtfully, saying, any word I say, anything I say, any opinion, any fact, and etc., put more thought into it. Treat it as if there are about 200 people in front of you waiting to listen to you and tear you apart. Be conscious about that thing. And that has helped me tremendously, actually.
When you started talking about Vodafone, I remembered the other one. That's why I started laughing, which is probably years after social media became effective as a customer complaint channel. Somebody had tweeted saying that, dear Vodafone CEO, I want to
marry your CEO. Yeah, I remember that.
And the automated response, we will deal with it in 24 to 48 hours.
The interesting thing is, I was in Ogilvy at the time when the tweet happened, and we used to handle Vodafone.
Amazing. That's a PR lesson in itself, I'm sure.
Totally.
So 2008 actually rings a bell, right? Because that's around the time that I approached you for Milli Blog on Bangalore Mirror.
Correct. That's right. Yeah.
what interested me about Milliblog was there was a word count, there was a point of view in that. Also, the same time that you are running your little plagiarism crusade on I2FS,
Correct.
you are
Correct.
calling
That's right.
pretty much everybody who was copying Hindi music or
Yeah.
rather national music or regional music into Hindi, right? So one of the threads, and probably that's on hindsight, but one of the threads that I believe I got in that was, when I look at you right now, is that there is a strong point of view, right? And there is also taking a stance. If I'll just look at these two music-based properties in itself, do you think that was sort of a prequel in your own mind or on hindsight?
Absolutely. Totally. Totally. Because I wasn't this vocal on non-music topics at all. It just started as a music related blog, etc. And that was the only topic that I had even a point of view publicly at all. It was only in 2008 or 2009 I started Beast of Troll, the other blog, and got active on other topics. So I said, if it hurts my career or if it impacts my career, let it be positive to that also. Because music is not my career. I am not even trained in music. I have absolutely no idea at all. People just tell me that I sing well. That's probably in the bathroom, actually. That's about it. Zero musical knowledge. I'm just a common listener who just enjoys music like a normal person. That's about it. So having a point of view was important from a music point of view, because it was literally forced upon me, because I choose what I want to listen. I don't go by Spotify's playlist saying I might get something I listen interestingly on Spotify's algorithm and etc. So I wanted to have a weekly list of saying what should I listen to this week, which is new, which I like. And I thought there will be other people who would also be in the same boat and not just trusting algorithms blindly. Even algorithms, very difficult to find what to like. You listen to something, one clicks out of 10 maybe. Which is exactly like how we scroll on Insta. You keep on scrolling and something you like, and then you hit like, and then you keep on scrolling, and it's the same thing basically. The tyranny of algorithms, as you say that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's
No, so
why there were.
I
Go
agree,
ahead, go
because
ahead.
you are my mode of serendipity in the sense that an
Correct.
algorithm is trained. But if I look at your music list for a while and then I just pick
Correct.
something randomly, I know
Correct.
it'll land me somewhere surreptitious where I'm saying, oh, this an algorithm might not have picked up.
Correct, literally. And I've actually picked up a lot of little known songs which only appeal to me for some reason, and I have no hopes of it appealing to a broader audience at all. I'm not doing one super hit mukabla. I'm just doing my small 10 songs a week kind of list. Even if only 200 people like it, perfectly fine. I'm totally happy with it. In fact, I don't even want other people to like it. I'm making this list for myself. What do I listen to myself this weekend kind of stuff? If 200 more people gain from it, good enough. That's why I started sharing it. So music is a precursor. And while doing Milliblog and also talking about music, particularly in the comments, there used to be legendary fights on the comment section of Milliblog, particularly when a new ARM album comes. There used to be legendary fights at all, because I used to take a pointed, I don't like it for these reasons, I love it for these reasons. It's not very consistent. It depends on how the album is. So there I used to defend my viewpoint, and I acutely understand that you can't have fact based discussion about music liking at all. Basically all you can, yeah, is highly subjective at all. But even there, I try to consciously look beyond who I am talking to, remove ad hominem, personal, blah blah, comments, etc., as much as possible, and not look at it from the point of view, and as much as possible base it on the topic of discussion. That really helps me currently when I talk about advertising, marketing, and PR and all things communication, because I go after my point of view with a vengeance, saying this is what I believe in. Here are 10 reasons why. If somebody takes the effort of taking the effort of saying that here are 7 reasons why your point of view is wrong, here is a different way to think, I would love that. The problem is people don't go that direction at all. People generally stop with I love it, you don't like it. I don't like it, you like it. Yeah, okay, fine. I don't have anything to say to that at all. But if you explain why with some examples or prior reasons or some logical thinking, it will make both me and others look at another perspective, saying, I have given you one perspective. Here is another perspective to look at. There are very few people who do that consistently on LinkedIn comments, by the way.
So back to something that you mentioned earlier, right, on personal brand. Why do you think it's important, and is it important for everybody, or is it for a certain set of people of some sort of cohort that you have looked at?
I would personally think it's completely appropriate for every single person. think of it like how you choose to dress well. So there can be two reasons why somebody dresses well. One, they feel good about it themselves. That's one, obviously, which is probably the most important primary reason. But there is a truth that people dress well to be seen well. That is, that you are looked upon well. That people actually take a note that you are well dressed or well kept, kind of stuff. That's that. So that's
Maybe
the more
perceived,
important reason.
yeah, as a well-dressed
Exactly.
person.
Exactly, people perceive. So that's important to people. There is nothing wrong with thinking on the line saying people should look at me as a decently dressed person or a well dressed person or a well kept, well handled kind of person. That's the equivalent for personal branding also, similarly, because if you don't care about your digital footprint and digital appearances, strangers who have no clue who you are could form very different opinions that are completely clashing with your own thought of what you think about yourself. The dressing equivalent is the same thing for personal branding. Choose carefully how you actually manage your online persona. That would actually help from a personal branding point of view. So I would say it's very, very important for everyone completely. There is no bar at all for that.
So give us a little bit of idea on the approach that you have taken. So I would immediately vouch for that, because I remember one of the first people that I wanted to meet when I started consulting on my own. Before I, even packaged it as a fractional CMO or a 6-month CMO, was you, because I saw how well you have packaged your identity across the. So give us a little bit of an understanding of what has been your approach in this.
Got it. So it's very basic, basically. So we go back to marketing of products and brands, basically. Pick any product, and if it needs to be communicated to any audience, whether it's a target audience which is active or a passive audience which might eventually purchase into your product at all, if at all they want, or it could be people who will point the finger at saying, I'm not an internet audience, but my daughter, my son, my friend, my cohort, my colleague would want to buy it, and then you point figure. So there could be any kind of audiences, passive, active, pointing fingers, word of mouth, blah, blah, etc. How would the brand communicate to all these people? It's a lot of people, basically. So the brand won't send 100-page PDF and then say, here are 200 features of the product. This is a 100-page PDF at all. You choose the top 3 things that people can remember and associate with that product: a phone, a laptop, anything, a watch, anything at all. That's how you do. And even like just services alone, not just products alone. So similarly for personal branding, you pick and choose the dimensions or areas that you want people to associate with you mostly or strongly. Instead of, we are all humans. We have 100 different interest areas and all that stuff completely. It's not easy to crunch everything into 3 bullet points like you're selling a phone, and we are not phones, we are people. So much, it's actually part of our identity. It's who we are, and there's so many dimensions to the identity, so it's very difficult to crunch it. But I say, for the purpose of digital footprint or digital exposure, which is very, very limited. It's not like you're living your life on 24/7 video like that movie starring Jim Carrey. Not that, actually. You are actually curtailing people's view of who you are. So you better think on those lines and saying, within the limited time that people spend on you online, maybe finding your post here and there, what would you want to leave in their heads at all? It can't be just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 100 things, because then there is no handle of what do I think about this person at all. He or she seems to be thinking of 100 different things. But if you narrow them towards a few topics more often, it might be easier for people to understand. So the simple analogy I give in my workshops is, imagine you're living in a house with 100 windows. You shut 95 windows or 96 windows and consciously choose 6 or 7 windows or 5 windows to open. Which are those windows to your life that you want to open from a digital exposure point of view? And do that more often so that people will associate you with those topics. That, in essence, is personal brand. That's about it.
Absolutely. I remember you giving the Ranveer Singh, Deepika Padukone example at some point.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to talk about that? That I thought was a very, very interesting way to put it.
Yes. I have asked this question in most of my workshops. I have asked saying, who is the most outrageously clothed Bollywood actor? 100% everybody says Ranveer Singh, except that one odd person who says Govinda, who still belongs to the 80s and 90s. Nothing wrong at all. He was actually the original Ranveer Singh, by the way. The Govinda was that.
Absolutely.
Except one, everybody says Ranveer Singh. So I did ask the question generally saying, do you think Deepika Padukone also thinks that he is outrageously clothed, or how does he clothe himself when he is in private with Deepika Padukone? he won't be outrageously clothed at all because it's a persona. He's a persona. He's trying to attract the best of brands, the best of services, the best of ad agencies, etc. across the spectrum, whether it's a serious bank brand or a really corny bubblegum brand, doesn't matter. Everybody just comes to him. And his choice of movies roles, which is a lot more difficult for him to choose because he doesn't decide what kind of movies to be made, but he also chooses them focused in a way. So he also does a gully boy, he also does very corny roles and etc. at the same time. He's able to carry it. To some extent, I think Kamal Hassan is a precursor to that. He has done every kind of role that you can think of. The really corniest one in terms of comedy or the most serious violent movies, he's done everything. He's that versatile from that point of view. But the point is, going back to the 100 window house example, that example is for people who are living outside the house. You are inside the house, and there are people with you inside the house, like your friends, family, colleagues, immediate colleagues, not extended colleagues, people who really know you, to whom you can say, come on, you know me, right? I won't do that. But outside people, you can't say, come on, you know me, right? They will say, no, I don't know you at all. Of course, not at all. So that's the difference between the two. So be conscious that you need to be completely 100% yourself. All the windows open to the people who already know you, who live with you, who work with you, who love you, you love them. But you don't need to be your 100% yourself with the people outside the house. When I say I'm not 100%, it's not like you're faking a persona. You're just being partial to the persona of 100 you. Instead of being 100 you, you're being 5 you to them. That's about it. So it's a part of you. You're not creating something out of nowhere. It's a part of you. But that smaller part you amplify and highlight to outsiders because they are strangers. They don't know you from.
Absolutely. I think so. I think the phrase that they use for it is a curated authenticity, which I think after you've said all this absolutely makes sense. Right?
Yes, it is.
You mentioned workshops, right? I'm sure there will be at least 2 or 3 guys raising their hand there and saying, but I don't, maybe all of that. So what are the top 3 that come out in all of these?
Well, the biggest is that despite all you say, Karthik, what if I say something wrong and get into trouble online? Because online, it's very easy to get into trouble. Offline, it's not. Suppose if I go to an event and do panel discussions, I say something, there can always be ways to manage it online, offline. I mean, during the panel, after the panel, during the gathering, tea, drinking, whatever it is. But online, that screenshot lives forever or the post lives forever. It goes places and people completely unrelated to me, my company start trolling me, my company, and everything goes haywire. How do I handle this? That's the biggest question everybody has. And to them, most of them I say, and this is because I do this workshop for senior people who have spent at least 15, 20 years in the industry, whatever industry it is, it's that you already talk to a huge audience. That is, you already do one-to-many communications in your offline world. You speak to millions of employees, hundreds of employees, thousands of customers. You do that already. Thousands of shareholders, stockholders, everything. You do that already. And every time you do that, you are conscious that there are a lot of people listening. So you put in a lot of thought. The same thought that you would put like when you go to the stage and address complete strangers and thousands. That thought. That same thought you need to put every time you utter anything on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever it is, that level of thought. And then they say, oh, it's that complicated. I said, it's not complicated at all. You're just being thoughtful overall. That's about it. So the number one question everybody are saying, what if I get into trouble? That's the only thing there. And I actually give them an example of a tweet from a person who was at the other time with Netflix. I remember she was traveling from London to South Africa and said, I hope I don't get AIDS, I'm white. And she tweeted it, got into the plane, and then forgot about it because there's no access anymore at all with Twitter. By the time she landed in South Africa, in fact, she was born in South Africa, her family lives in South Africa. That's the irony of it. By the time she landed, she didn't have a job. 2 large publications have done an op-ed on her, and the whole world was waiting for it, saying, has she landed, has she landed? Hashtag, has she landed? My God, that was complete chaos. If she had at least been there to check the kind of visceral reaction she's getting 5 minutes after she tweeted, she would have taken some action and stemmed the tide. But it was I think some 11 hours later, she found out that she didn't have a job. Of course, she's doing much better now, but that's what can happen. So be more thoughtful, not just when you talk to people offline, but when you're posting something online, even more be thoughtful because it can be completely taken out of context.
So related question. So that's only one. Anything else that people really ask about? So one I could imagine, I don't know if I've heard you saying this or somebody where you were in a chat saying this, that I'm an introvert.
They do. Yeah, correct. And I have written about this also because I have a strong point of view on introverts being more appropriate for social media than extroverts actually. Because
would say that.
I believe that, yeah, I believe because I'm actually an introvert. I don't go out and talk to strangers at a random stretch at all. And I find social media to be more easier for me to communicate with because there is no instant audience, of course. Even though I say that you need to imagine your audience, which is very different from having an instant audience. So you are talking to strangers, but you're not conscious that you're talking to strangers. So you generally can talk more confidently, more openly, more vocally, kind of stuff. But having said that, you will get comments. You will get visceral comments if you say something provocative. Immediately comments will follow. Of course, if you don't have many followers, you won't get comments. But things generally go places when there is something of a provocation in anything, and you will get comments to that. But you can actually shut the comments down. So there are options to completely shut everything down. You can mute people, you can block people, and etc. So generally for introverts, it's a better avenue to test your introversion is what I believe actually.
Now, I would say that today outrage is inevitable. Like you said, it might depend on the follower count, but outrage is inevitable. Like somebody joked, in 2030, children will be born outraged. They're already outraged at the world. Like,
actually, children are... I mean, the thing is that they're always outraged when they're born. They cry, exactly. Why the hell am I here? Yeah, correct.
Exactly. Who asked for this
it's kind of... It's too bright. Yeah.
So I'm guessing that is true. But tell me something. So you are, I would say, I know you to be on at least 3 platforms: LinkedIn, Twitter, and Insta. And you're, I wouldn't say these are different personality, but they bring out different facets of your character. So for example, I would say LinkedIn is, I think you're absolutely on point. There is I know your post which has got the concentric circles, right? So you stay absolutely true to that. And that's something that, by the way, I have taken as a sort of Bible in my approach to this. I don't always live up to that, but I still try nevertheless. The Twitter one is a little more freer, I would say, because you will do PGs, you will talk about politics quite a bit, you will do all of that. Insta is, I think, completely out there. Once in a while, there is probably an ad post or something, but most of the time, it's original behavior of flowers blooming.
Gardening, yeah.
Right. So that's a conscious choice? Why does that work that way?
It's a conscious choice. So I see it as this way. So Twitter is probably the only 100% open platform, and this you would know because we have both done social media monitoring in the background for a brands or for an agency. And Twitter, and usually when you use a professional monitoring tool, 95% of the results are from Twitter. Now, of course, it would have changed dramatically because of Elon Musk various tweaks and complete combination. It's become so complicated, you don't even know what platform it is. But till he took over, it was 100% open platform. Unless people have a locked profile, everything that you say potentially goes to the world. No other platform was like that. Facebook, most people consciously chose friends only post. I need to consciously choose a public post so that the post can become public. The default was friends only. Most people for that. LinkedIn is a walled garden. You cannot find LinkedIn posts out on a Google search at all. Instagram is another walled garden. You cannot find the individual Instagram posts on Google search at all. Twitter was the only platform. If you're logged into Google search, you'll also see tweets. So that's the one way. So I thought if it's 100% open thing, there is no rules for content in terms of professional, personal, sports. There's nothing at all. You can talk about anything. So Twitter to me is like a busy street. I just stand in the middle and shout. Some people listen, some people don't listen, some people respond, they move on. LinkedIn is almost like a busy office corridor. I sit inside, I stand in an office corridor and talk. Some people listen, some people talk, some people comment, and etc. Instagram is completely, I have no idea what it is, a very thing. In fact, I joined very, very late kicking and screaming because I'm not a visual first person. I'm a words first person. I like words more than visuals. So I thought, what the hell am I going to do in the platform? I don't belong to the platform at all, but it has been fantastic. Actually, the kind of audience that I'm getting there is very different from both Twitter and LinkedIn. It's very unique also. But I actually contort my thoughts to fit to a stupid image if necessary, and I put really long post like a blog post, but nobody has said, why do you write long text on Instagram at all? Nobody cares. They see the visual. If they really like it, they read the rest of the post and then comment. So there's no problem at all. So I just contorted myself to whatever. In fact, I know a couple of journalistic organizations, I think National Geographic and BBC, they use a very similar tactic. They write for 2000 characters. They write long stories in the post itself, and people really appreciate it along with that image. So that's there. Now I've extended my Twitter persona to also Threads and Mastodon, because I believe they seem to be having a common thread, to put it in a simple way. They all three seem to be completely public of sort that way. And then Instagram is still the odd one out. LinkedIn is different. Facebook, I'm 100% open. I don't post any friends only post at all. Everything is public. So I look it as an extended version of Twitter, basically. So those 4 platforms, completely open. Instagram is odd one out. LinkedIn continues to be an office corridor.
So at a very broad level, adjacent question to this, is that a sort of platform approach that you would suggest for most people, or does it have to be, I understand it's generalization, but do you have to look at your personality and your tastes and values, etc., before you make a choice of these platforms when building your personal brand?
You need to. So I generally suggest that pick a couple of professional areas that you're interested in or passionate about, and pick at least 1 or 2 personal areas that you are interested in and passionate about. And then immediately ask me, what if I pick Hindi film songs as my personal liking? How can I talk about it on LinkedIn at all? That doesn't make sense at all completely. So I said there are creative ways that you can bring it. For instance, you can actually end a post with a lyrics of a famous Hindi film song, which will be appropriate or relevant to that. So you can showcase your interest on that. Suppose if you're interested in Hinduism or gods, religion, etc., you can always connect the threads between something happening in a corporate with something from Bhagavad Gita or something like that. Those work very well on LinkedIn. But if it's connected well appropriately, there is always a thread that you can pick relevance in terms of storytelling itself. So even a personal interest, you can bring it occasionally, not hammer it again and again. But on Twitter, you get a complete freedom because there is no rules for any kind of content at all. You can talk about that personal topic as a standalone post itself. Completely, there's no problem. Here, it's less often that you can do that. There, you can do that more often. So I strongly suggest keep both at the same time. Consciously look for ways to bring this personality into that and that personality.
Got it. So another thing that, I think a lot of debate comes up on personal brand, influencer, same species, different species, overlapping species. What's your take on that? Are you, do you have a personal brand, or are you an influencer? Are you both? What's the scene here?
I have a personal brand. I don't see myself as an influencer. In fact, I put it in my bio. My words are not for sale. Completely not for sale at all. No influencer. I keep getting at least 2 mails or calls from agencies every week. Let us say, what's your rate card? What's your rate card? So I said, I have only an Aadhaar card. I don't have a rate card at all. So I can't do anything about it. In fact, I have a GST card and Aadhaar card. There's no GST card registration and Aadhaar card only. No rate card at all. So this is something that people mistake in my workshops. Even the senior most people, they say that I have been reasonably active on LinkedIn, but I have only 250 followers on LinkedIn. I said, that's immaterial if you are not thinking of yourself as an influencer. No, but I am a thought leader. I want to be a thought leader. Saying, okay, pause. Okay, no influencer, no thought leader. If you think about your personal brand alone, which is this side, influencer, thought leader is this side. If you think about your personal brand alone, you wouldn't focus on the follower count. You would actually first focus on what you are gaining yourself while you're sharing something. Have you learned something before sharing with people? Or is it something that interests you yourself in the first place? If it doesn't, then you are pandering to an audience. There is nothing wrong with pandering to an audience at all. That's the influencer model. That's the only thing. Be sure about what you want to be. Because it's almost like this. I actually take this analogy very, very often. Personal branding is like personal health. Both involve only what goes in and what goes out. You control what goes in, what goes out, you get great health. You control what you read and what goes out in terms of what you say, good personal brand. That's what you have. And the balance of it is what is personal brand versus personal health, basically. Now, in that case, if you are bothered about how many people look at you while you are running every day, that is the influencer model. If you're bothered about, I am being very happy by running myself every day, that's personal brand. So that's personal brand with influence. So you don't bother about the world particularly. Of course, you still need to look at saying how many visits to the blog from your LinkedIn post, or how many engagements, how many views. but you don't take action on building that again and again. Because once you start falling into the trap, you will fall into the algorithmic trap of, okay, these kind of posts doing well, let me do more of that. That's when things will go down south, because you're not really gaining anything, you're not learning anything, you're just pandering to that algorithm. Do more of it again and again to get numbers. If you just do this alone, you gain, let others gain, let others get value, you get value, you will automatically build a follower base. It may not be in millions, but it will at least be targeted and relevant, who will point the finger at you when there is a need on topics that you have built association with.
That's interesting. And I'll bring this up a little later when we start talking about ads. So my counter to this is that, don't you see a value in, so what you're basically saying is that just because 300 people are liking your PJ, don't start putting PJs every day, right? I'm slightly guilty of that. But
not necessarily. For instance, there is this Vaidehi Murthy from Dunzo. Her entire Twitter profile is PJ, 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 PJ. There is nothing else. She doesn't even talk about Bangalore weather. Exactly. That's her full-time profession, basically. So it helps her. So she has carved her personal brand saying, I want to be the world's #1 PJist. That's about it. Punner, basically.
Right. So for her job, there is a direct alignment. No problem there at all. Let's say for somebody who is just randomly
part-time PJ.
Part-time PJ, exactly. Part-time PJ just blurts out, right? Do you see no value for the reach it might generate? When you say that, okay, don't go by that only, or is that like a continuum in which you have to play both in balance so that you somehow moderate the reach as well as you have? What's your take on this?
Reach matters. So for instance, if you do this for 6 months and your reach still is completely plateaued out, there is no change at all, you will feel disoriented and you will actually feel disillusioned. Why the hell am I doing this kind of stuff? But again, I go back to the running example. The running activity, if you're actually running everyday kind of stuff or at least more times a week, it's a very lonely activity. It's very, very lonely. It's just you and your legs and your shoes. You're running somewhere, whether it's a treadmill
your podcast.
And your podcast. Yeah, exactly. Which is what I'm coming to. So you need to have internal ways to actually generate interest, daily, day after day, motivate yourself at all. You should not peg your motivation on external factors. It should always be on internal factors. That's the most important thing. Which is why I say, look at the reach, look at the numbers, but don't action your content strategy based on the numbers alone. Use the strategy to build basically based on your motivation to read more, to that. So for instance, this example that I give to most people, that the so-called online properties like i2fs and Milliblog are read by far less people than some of the larger blogs and YouTube channels. I just don't care at all. I don't make money out of them. I don't want to actually. But if you want to make money out of them, then you're an influencer. So be conscious about that, which is not wrong at all, because you go after one audience, you pander to them, give them what they like, and then you have an audience, you become an influencer, rate card, and you work that. But I just try to delineate between that. If you want that, do that. If you don't do that, have an internal motivator so that you can continue doing it without bothering about how many people. But at the end of 10 years, you would suddenly realize that there is a lot more people than the 300 that you can visibly see. This is something that I tell people again. What you see online in terms of reactions and likes is only under 1% of the internet. Actually, it's actually a mirage that you notice. The bottom that don't comment, don't say anything at all, don't leave any digital trail that they have actually read your post is 99%. These are the people who will tell you have no idea they existed. They know that you exist. When you meet them in a restaurant or a hotel or in a meeting in a client meeting, hey, you are Karthik, I saw your post last week. This is that person. This is 99% of the internet. But we go by the 1% reaction saying, oh my God, I'm not getting enough likes, I'm not getting enough comments. That's not the world at all. It's a very curtailed view of the world, ironically.
No, I agree. It's a tip of the iceberg. I think the original social rule was 1-9-90. 1 creator, 9 share, 90.
Exactly, which may have changed slightly because creating content has become democratized right now.
Yeah,
but even then, I think the 9 would still be very, very high, basically.
I agree. But I think where I would probably debate with you is that you're still an influencer. You're not a paid influencer. That I think is the right?
I don't consider myself influencer at all. I still write without any external influence. I just write whatever comes to my mind without any fear or any external influence at all. I just don't care. So there is no influencing at all.
I'll still repeat my Apple joke and say that basically the day after you switch to Apple, you is bought a case against Apple. So
it's so sad, man. I quite like the iPhone. It's quite nice.
It is. Cool. So now I want to switch to a slightly more philosophical take on this, right? And I'm asking that because I remember at some point I had brought up Goffman's presentation of self in everyday life. And you said something to the extent that a bunch of things that I have written and thought about come from there. Right?
Yeah.
So I know you think deeply about these things. So at a philosophical level, I read something recently, Naomi Klein's Doppelganger. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So there she's basically, she's famous from the No Logo book as well. So her stance on brands are reasonably clear. So she says in the book about what happens to the self. And I'm going to quote from this book, right? So I'm going to read from here. There is you and then there is brand you. As much as we might like to believe that these selves can be kept separate, brands are hungry, demanding things, and one self necessarily impacts the other. So what she asks after that is what is interesting. So she says, which of our opinions are genuine and which are for show? Which friendships are rooted in love and which are co-branding collabs? What collaborations don't happen that should happen because individuals because individuals' brands are pitted against one another? What doesn't ever get said or shared because it's off-brand? So have you ever felt that the personal brand and the person, is there a friction or is there, would you even know if there is a takeover, for instance, right? That I'm only doing this for an audience. I know you have said that just pretend there is an audience, but does that happen in your experience?
So it's a very good book. I probably need to pick it because what you read really spoke to me. It's very nice. I will 100% pick the book. I have not heard about this book. I will do that. But I don't see a friction at all because even when I randomly post on LinkedIn, which is every day, probably in the morning, every day kind of stuff, I consciously look it as a part of my everyday life. It's not that I am talking to strangers audience. Let me put it this way. I'm conscious that if somebody who I don't know reads that post, and when they meet me half an hour later, which is just a possibility, it may not happen at all completely, but it's a possibility. I assume the possibility. They shouldn't find a distinction between who they read and who they are talking to now, basically. So I'm conscious about that. So I'm always perennially conscious about whenever I'm putting that, would I say that to my daughter? Would I say that to my wife? Would I say that to my parents? Same thing, literally. I mean, topic-wise, it's different. There are some topics which are not appropriate for daughter, some topics not appropriate for mother, father, etc. But if they are normal people in my family, would I say this to them? That's the only thing that I'll post on. There are things that are completely personal between me and my wife, which won't go anywhere online at all, completely. And just for her. And between me and my dad, me and my mother, me and my daughter, son, etc. Completely personal. There is no public persona to that at all, completely. So everything that I post is 100% what you will get when you meet me. I'm conscious about that, and I actually recommend this to every single person. Think about this filter. And this is actually a very common filter. Said, never post something that you won't tell your mother or your priest. This is actually a famous quote on the internet quite some time ago. I would just twist it something. Never post anything that you won't tell your mother, spouse, or daughter, or son kind of stuff. Same thing. So even if you post something, articulate it in a way that it can still become appropriate for your daughter or your son. For instance, if you're really angry and you're letting it go, think about saying, would you say this to your daughter? Would you say this to your son at all? I mean, would you just share it with your son or daughter? It's not about them, it's about something else. Or think of it this way, 5 years hence, when they see your post online, what would they think about their father? So be conscious about that. Don't ever think that these are in isolation. You have one life, whether it's digital life or offline life, it'll all completely come together at some point. You don't know when it will come. Maybe 10 years later, 7 years later, it will come at one point. And it will haunt you for the rest of your life. So be absolutely conscious about that. Have only one persona that you have. That's the only persona that you believe in. There is a hidden persona, which is a personal persona that you share with people you absolutely trust and love, which is very different completely. Don't ever bring it in the digital profile, no matter how close to the platform proposes itself as. Don't even trust it at all. So that's the larger thinking. One persona, that's it.
What nonsense. You're supposed to be vulnerable on LinkedIn, okay, and show all that. No, but seriously, what I think is that, and that has come out in practically every odd question that I've asked you, is that you're very deliberate and conscious in this entire approach to things. I somehow wonder if you are probably one of the outliers in this. And does that actually, what I read before, does that actually explain the mental health crisis that later generation, probably millennials and Gen Zs are going through, because they are somehow living a real life and wondering what the real life is about? So I don't know whether people are taking what you said. I would really love it if people really bought themselves, whatever
Yeah.
curated form of that, which is
Yeah.
not a completely different thing.
Correct.
Right? Okay,
Correct.
like you
Correct.
said, curate your personality, bring it online, but don't let it be that you are suddenly playing Beyonce on screen and in
Correct.
real life you are some, big person.
Completely something else. Yes. Correct.
Oh yeah, so that's enough in philosophy. We'll switch quickly to our second topic.
In fact, if I may just add on the philosophy, but somebody recently asked me that can your digital good behavior, because you want to be seen as a good person online, so you say things well, can it affect your real life? That is, can you become a better person in real life too? Which is very interesting. I thought that's really interesting. Suppose if you put on a show that you are very caring, you are genuine, you like these kind of topics and etc., can it transcend back to the real life? Which is very interesting, because the reason why somebody might behave well online is that they are being watched. So because they're being watched, there is an audience. They pander to that audience saying, I want to be seen as good. Now, offline, this is India. You are always being watched everywhere. There are 100 people everywhere you go. So it's all the more reason to think that it might actually make you a better person. Only when you're completely not what you're 100% sure, you just let your inner demon out, kind of stuff. Other than that, you remain a decent civil person, which is quite interesting, I thought. Reverse philosophy, actually.
It's a reverse of fake it till you make it. It's a different version of that you're, and I completely agree with that, because even in many books that I've read, sometimes your physiology, when it is forced to do certain things, confidence is the easy one, right? You do this and suddenly mentally you feel a little more confident. When you take a deep breath, suddenly
you do
comfortable, right? On that. So absolutely possible. Yeah. So
and I mean, just to add, because you talk about physiology, and I've actually done this also. For instance, if you start running today, for instance, you have never ran at all. If you start running today, you can only run for about half a kilometer. You can't run beyond that at all. It's a habit. You keep trying every single day, day after day after day. After about 2 months, you would realize that you can run about 2-3 kilometers without any effort. Similarly with weights, similarly with push-ups. First day, you would probably do only 2 push-ups if you're doing for the first time ever. After 2 months, if you just keep on at it for 2 months, you'll be able to do 10, 15 without a break at all. It's a habit. So it's basically like muscle memory. So the more you do that, the more your both physiology and behavior changes accordingly. It's practice till you are perfect, literally.
I agree on the second part also, that I heard it on a podcast recently as somebody who suggested it as a sort of a thought experiment. Said, nobody wants a surveillance state.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But he's saying, for a minute, just imagine you've got 100% surveillance state. That everything being watched. So would you lie? Would you be able to lie? Would you lie? Would you be?
You'll be conscious all the time. Yeah.
Exactly. Would you need cops? Because if everybody in the planet can see that I'm stabbing somebody or robbing somebody, I don't need cop. I just need somebody to enforce that, okay, take this person to jail or wherever. Probably the civil society itself will take me to jail.
Correct.
But it's a brilliant thought experience. So it kind of, gets into what you're saying, that if you consciously start doing this all the while, probably you'll become conscious enough in your real life to say that, you know what, I have a persona to aspire to, I have a persona to live up to. I probably can't be this person anymore, right?
Which is probably the source of all religions, because they said God is watching you, behave well. Literally the source of all religion. Literally.
God is the original surveillance state, but...
Exactly. He's always watching you, so behave well. And he's not watching you in this life, he will watch you in the next life also, so behave well. I mean, like between the lives also.
He has got the file on you, so he's going to be watching you for that.
Permanent file, yes.
Super. So getting into our second large topic, broad topic rather, advertising and communication commentary, right? So this is related to how you post practically every day or sometimes multiple times a day on. And I know from our conversations how you process of how you do it. But just for the sake of people listening or watching, what would be a deconstruction of your ad commentary in terms of how you decide and what do you decide to comment on? Because I'm sure, given the number of papers that you read in a day, online or offline, there are a gazillion things that you could comment on, but you choose only certain topics.
Correct.
How does that work?
So, regardless of other topics, particularly with marketing and advertising, specifically what I share, there is no science to what I pick, why I pick, etc. I just look at instinctively what talks to me. Is there something that talks to me in some interesting manner? And I put myself in the shoes of a normal consumer, not a very evolved, intelligent consumer, just normal consumer. What stands out in whatever I'm seeing? I'm sure there could be hundreds of things that could stand out in hundreds of ads. And I see a lot of ads week after week after week. All the more reason my bar is slightly higher in terms of something has to stand out. I can talk about 200 ads, but I pick only one from the 200 that I watch. So it's almost like Milliblog again. I've actually listened to about 200 songs. I pick only 5 that really spoke to me at some level. The only difference is in this case, I can explain with slightly more rational thought and logic why that ad appealed to me as an individual. I don't go into any commentary about predictions, whether this ad will work, whether this brand will succeed or not. Those data are available only with the agency and the brand manager. Nobody else has it at all. So there's no point talking about that at all. I can only at best say, based on what appealed to me, it may appeal to a larger number of people. It may not appeal to a larger number of people. That's the only thing. And within that, quite a few people have actually told me this also as a complaint, saying, why do you go into so much detail, even explaining the ad? I can watch it myself. The irony is the total number of people who watch along those lines is much smaller than that much larger number of people who completely miss all those obvious details also. So more people have told me saying, without you posting it, I would have never noticed that particular thing in the background. And I'm happy that at least I'm giving that opportunity to somebody to see it in a different way. It's all about perspectives. Perspectives fascinate me. Literally, for instance, the easiest way to explain perspectives, I close this eye, I see one part of the world. I close this, I see a different part of the world. And that's really interesting. And I stand in this point and see this ad. Somebody else would be seeing it the other side and seeing the ad in a different way. I would love to know these different perspectives. And I try to put myself in those shoes, try to imagine saying, how would it look? I mean, it'll be a whole new world for them. Would be very jaded for me kind of stuff. That's literally what I do. I just want perspectives to be put forward so that people who may not have considered those perspectives can start considering them and look at it with fresh wonder. That's the only approach that I look at.
Speaking of brands and agencies, how many death threats have you got so far?
Nobody at all. It's only people who are impressed with what I have written, they write to me. If they're angry, they don't write to me. They don't say anything at all. They just crunch their teeth and stop. Yeah, probably secretly brought in, yes.
You brought in, like, join this club. There's a secret WhatsApp club somewhere.
I'm sure there is something. I don't want to know about it.
All right. So I think we've discussed this earlier as well, that we both, I think, agree on the fact that advertising in some way or the other is persuasion. Are we still?
Yeah, it is. Very much.
Agree.
Yeah,
yes, right.
Yeah.
So one of the conversations I increasingly get pulled into or see other people having is at the very top of the funnel. There is this entire debate of sorts happening between long-term brand building and, just conversation-inducing ads. Saw probably Bold Care recently.
Yep.
Even yesterday's or day before's Handa.ai, right, from Pepsi.
Correct. Yeah.
The questions that I want to ask you, and this is in the long term, right, and not for only the sake of that ad. Is there a possibility that brands could get trapped in this virality loop, leading to sort of an all tactics, no strategy kind of thing? Or if I put it very, very broadly, is this enough for brand building, in your view?
It's not. I think it's a mix of both. It's almost like, let's go back to the personal branding thing. You have 5 topics selected for yourself as to who you are. 3 of them are professional, 2 of them are personal. You do the personal less, you do the professional more. So the equivalent of brand building is you do the viral thing twice, which is 2, and you do the long-term brand building thrice, which is more value for your brand. But this rubs into that rubs into this. So it's not this one alone or that one alone. It's a nice mix of both, because somebody even commented in that Pepsi Thandai ad saying, what is this pointless thing? There is no connection between AI and Pepsi. Why are they even doing this? Why are they wasting money? It's not that they're wasting money. It is still a topical day, Holi. Again, you could ask saying, what does Pepsi have anything to do with Holi at all? But that's not how Pepsi thinks. Pepsi thinks that if it's Holi, people drink something, whether it's Thandai or something, and Pepsi could also be considered as one of the drinks, not necessarily Thandai. So it's a good thought to have from a Pepsi brand manager point of view. So how do I plonk myself in that cultural moment with something at least 60% appropriate, not 100% appropriate, at least 60% appropriate. The 40% goes to the virality part of it, which is the AI element and all that thing. Basically, you have something topical, have something holy, and then you put that out. So I think it's a good, healthy mix. You do both, basically. The problem comes when you take only one seriously and keep on doing that. The viral alone kind of stuff. You don't do the other things at all. But having said that, you can still argue saying, what does Zomato do? Zomato keeps on doing viral. But they don't spend money on those virals. The only spending money they do is actually the ads on TV, which is Ranveer Singh kind of stuff, which still instills the brand, saying Zomato, keep on ordering. Their largest strategy is all things food. They keep on talking about food. They don't talk about delivery as much as they talk about food. So every time you think of food, you think of Zomato is their basic approach. So it's a mix. Don't get stuck with only one saying, मुझे long-term brand building ही करना है, I won't do viral, और मुझे viral ही करना है, मुझे long-term brand building नहीं करना है. That's a problem. Have a mix, it will be good.
I agree. I also think that there is a sort of, I think the guys in the middle of the problem. So if you're a relatively less known brand and you really want awareness, then probably virality is a great way to build it. If you're at the other end of the
correct,
right? Or you're Pepsi,
correct.
You can't say my product is better. Like, what will you talk about your product? You can't talk about you have all of that is being mapped endlessly. Right? So you need to have some ala to the overall thing and say that, okay, let's talk about it because it's topical. I think it's the guys in the middle that struggle. Where you need to do a little bit of this and you need to do a little bit of that, right? But interestingly, because you bring that up, right? We spoke about slightly earlier about, depending on what the audience like, you start changing your content strategy from a personal brand. The same thing could actually work out for a brand where it says that, hey, this one got talked about like crazy and we should just keep doing it. You know, the 1 4-letter brand that immediately comes to mind when you say that, right?
Correct.
Name is Liam is killing mosquitoes. Beautiful. But what do you do again?
Nobody knows.
I on both sides, right? I keep telling them that all they want is the visibility of the brand. The moment they download the app, maybe the product itself will talk. Maybe. I don't know yet, right? Maybe that is a strategy. But it's all very subjective. It's all very subtle. You really don't know what is actually happening in the brand managers.
It's there, but again, see it from the practical point of view. You've been a CMO, you've been a brand manager. You have a finite pool of money. It's not infinite at all, unless you are Pepsi kind of stuff. And even they have a finite, everybody has a finite pool of money for marketing. Everybody. Literally, if you assume it's 100, you need to apportion it in one calendar year. Literally, that's how you plan basically. In that calendar year, you always have certain high impact areas or timelines basically. So basically, Diwali festive time is 1. IPL time, summer time is 2. Depending on the category also. It actually depends on various categories. For instance, ACs, it will be not so Diwali, it's only summer, literally. Summer, like pre-summer, peak summer kind of stuff. That's about it. Depending on the category, you will have 2 high points. The high points, you will spend more money because you will use more targetable, more brand impacting kind of media vehicles. And there'll be 2 big spikes in a calendar. There'll be much smaller spikes that you can afford to have with limited pools of money. And those smaller ones, you let the content itself do the virality, content do the talking. That's the example of a Holi or a Thandai kind of stuff. You let the content fly by itself without you pushing money again. For everything, it's literally like that. Even from personal branding point of view, there are some topics you will notice never gets you traction. Never gets you. For instance, if you are in the finance space or the HR space and you talk about the future of finance and HR, it's a very fairly limited kind of topic within the world of finance or people interested in finance. It's a complex topic, not many people. But I'd still recommend you do it at least once a month or 1.5 times a month. One serious post or one less serious kind of post, because it's your bread and butter. Don't ignore it. Don't go completely off key into the fun things alone. Do that often. For instance, my personal branding posts, they don't generate as much attention as the advertising related posts actually, because it's not a universally wanted liked topic. Advertising it's a emotion, it's a feeling. Everybody likes it. But with personal branding, not as many people like it. The total hits is much lesser. But I still persist month after month because the number of people it reaches, it has a phenomenal impact on the number of work that I get in terms of workshops and etc. So people don't know. People can't see the immediate reactions and reach digitally. I see it in terms of my balance sheet actually. So it helps me basically.
Perfect. All right. So, this is the one that I think we have differing points of view, right? So, like we discussed earlier, for a personal brand, authenticity really matters, right? Even if it is curated, like we discussed, and you need to choose what to highlight. So, would we scale it to a brand also? That's the first question. And the example that I would take is the recent Urban Company Women's Day ad, right? Where, it was an ad. It was an ad that we both liked. It's an ad.
Correct.
Where we differed was that
what does the brand live up to?
Yeah, in the larger world where the brand is actually operating, it's actually exploiting women. Told so by several news reports that came in.
Correct. It's a fact.
So the question to you is actually that, is this what our friend calls doglapan worth the overall backlash that the brand will get? What do you think about that?
So first, I don't think brands can have personality by definition. Brands can have personality based on what audience think about it, which is very different from brands to be defined with a personality. Because brands are not humans. Brands are a collection of humans. So every single human working on the brand would have a different personality or a splinter personality that won't probably merge together at all. So I don't think brands can be defined with a personality, even though you can have a broad stroke for the case of communication, saying you need to communicate, so you need to have a larger tone and narrative, and for that purpose you need to infuse a personality. That's about it. But you can't assume that that's what even audience will take. Audience will take whatever is their experience or whatever they gain from it. That's the only thing. So first, brands are not like humans because they don't have a personality, because they don't have that kind of width in terms of what goes in and what goes out. That's a big thing. That's one important thing. Apart from that, you also mentioned about what was the second point that you mentioned?
Essentially, that when you're reasonably sure, you could be reasonably sure that there will be people who point out your real life. Is that what?
Correct. So, which is a good point. And you made a good point in the comment saying this is factually proven. People have written about it, that they are exploiting women. They are not being 100% good to women at all. And that goes against what this ad shows, quite literally, basically. It's opposite experience of that kind of.
Yes.
Now, even here, I will question that premise. Yes, there have been stories about urban exploiting women. Yes, they have done it. But is it also true that you can find, say, 200 women whose lives have become better with urban? It may be a smaller number, larger number, equal number. I have no clue at all. Or it may be equal number, for all whatever it is, basically. So both can be true at the same time. It's almost like quantum physics. That same element can exist at the same space in two different places. We have the same state, two different places. So both can be true at the same time. For every 100 people who read that articles that say that this has exploited women, there could be 200 other people who would say, or 100 other people who would say, but I know 10 women whose life has completely changed. I mean, like, they have not bought cars at least, but they have at least got an Ola scooter or something like that. And their lives have changed from X to Y. There is a transformation change kind of stuff. So I think for that purpose, brands can still believe that they're doing well. It's only when the public persona completely changes that nobody thinks, or 99% of the people think you are completely hopeless, and you say something against it. It's almost like politics, basically. When a party is thinking completely arrogantly and etc., and people don't think on those lines, that's when they lose, basically. So it's almost like a end of their life cycle. They think they are superpowers. People don't think at all. They are voted out of power, basically. Similarly with brands also. So I mean, obviously, you can't have a very solid way to understand saying, am I really being thought well? Am I being thought no? Because all you can do is market research, and those are all smaller numbers, basically.
And they could read back, and
you need, but you need to always be on the forefront of keep on wanting to know what could be the sentiment, what could be sentiment, even though it's not 100% right. Keep on knowing it at least, but don't take big decisions based on what you know, limited manner. Think more, question more. Always ask 3 whys for everything. Why? Why not? Why not? Why not? Keep on asking. At the end of it, you'll probably have a much better answer than the first way.
So after all the debate, my thinking, when I just thought a little bit more about it was a conscious narrative to switch the overall conversation that is
Make
happening.
people think in a different direction. Exactly.
Exactly.
Against those articles kind of. I mean,
Because
the
it's
same
really
thing
not
could be argued for a Pepsi or a Coke because they are taking the groundwater from India. They're doing it probably in the worst manner. There was also a recent story about something else far more dastardly, I think in Maharashtra, what they are doing. And I just read it about 2 days ago on Twitter. So they are doing harm. But there is also some good. Whether it also outpaces the harm, I don't know at all. That they would probably know, or probably nobody would know at all. All they can expect is, can we tell a story that more people start believing that we are good? And hopefully, like I said earlier, the more people believe they are good, hopefully they also manifest the goodness eventually.
I think it also boils down to, you will probably share an ad that is heartwarming or entertaining, then
Yeah,
you would probably share a news about, okay, these women are being exploited, because
correct,
most of
correct,
the time you are not going to be really bothered about these women because they are outside of
correct,
your circle, so to speak.
correct,
So
exactly,
probably a very
correct,
well placed bet that let us
correct,
travel and let people,
correct,
like you said, I mean, we might be sitting and debating it. In the
true,
larger world, this is not even a point of debate. All
correct,
you're looking
possible.
at is possibly a WhatsApp message which shows, oh, देखो, अपन company की वजह
बहुत
से.
अच्छा है.
So anyhow, good thing that we bought the party thing, right? So one of the posts that probably changed my point of view, at least quite a bit, is something where you wrote about output, outtakes, and outcomes a while back. I think you had taken Modi's example during the COVID days,
Correct,
of his marketing jobs, round
correct,
one of it,
2020.
right?
Yes,
I was and continue to be largely a person driven by outcome, right? But I think that post gave me a perspective that the digital awards, etc., if I had to transplant it to a marketeer's life, these
yeah,
are as important as the business outcomes that are happening.
correct, correct.
So tell me something, and this is, I don't think we've debated this enough. I think you are not very happy with the Air India ad. Your thoughts on that were like, it doesn't really do
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the safety procedure ad, right? Not the other one.
correct, correct, correct,
Where you said that it doesn't really solve the thing that it is supposed to do. So
correct.
why would you not give it the benefit of doubt of an outtake? You believe the outtake won't happen in a public mind?
Not necessarily. I would actually. So I won't say it's a bad ad at all. I would probably put it saying it's not doing the heavy lifting of what it can potentially do. It doesn't even realize its potential, is what I would say. It's a very eye catchy, beautifully done, and it's probably the easiest thing to make people share it immediately. It can go viral because it mixes a modern topic with a traditional topic, cultural topic, and it does it in such a predictable manner, which is also another grouse I have with it. It's almost like a low bro prediction, basically. Instant, it will happen, it will share. People within 5 seconds of finish watching it, people will share it type. So it's that kind of an ad. So it's a guaranteed. So if you have started with the premise, then I would say you're being slightly lazy in not making it work slightly harder, not just that much more harder. One harder part is think about how much you are showcasing safety in it. You are saying exactly the same thing that every single safety procedure ad does, and it's going to be shown in their planes soon. So think more. Think of what other leading airlines have done more than just showing thing. Of course, there is a theme. There is a theme here also. They also use theme everything. But more practically, there is something contextual to something happened in January first week this year. It happened twice in 1 week in this year. Probably the worst ever period for any airline industry, airline category for a very long time, because airlines
Going a
fly.
phenomenally good.
Exactly. The CEO just was fired yesterday. Yesterday he actually quit. Basically, it's become that bad. I mean, we all thought that flying is 100% safe, no problem at all. But the first week of January 2024 changed everything, and people were shocked to see those views. And then later something happened. A door fell down. All those things are happening. In that context, if you're going to make a new safety ad for a brand which has got the country name in your brand name itself, make it work slightly harder, make people get something slightly newer than the same belt marlow, yeah, aega, aega kind of stuff. So all that they did is adding the dance element to it, which is a low pro effort to make it viral. That's about it. That's number one. Number two, if you take the dance element itself, it's not even done well, is my point. Of course, it looks very eye catching. The outtakes are fantastic, but it doesn't really push the narrative in any direction. This is a professional agency being paid millions. Make them think harder on how can we infuse the entire theme really well within it, instead of just making them do what an air hostess does, which is actually insulting them quite literally. Do something better, man. For instance, I would probably give more marks to Vistara's yoga themed safety ad, because it was yoga being done by an actual air hostess, not a, it was not a yoga instructor doing those safety instructions, which is what happening in the Air India ad. It was an actual uniformed Vistara employee doing yoga, which is very, very nice. And she was doing it in very interesting places. So you are still rooted to the airlines because of that uniform and the person. And it's just the backdrop keeps changing. That's basically, and this is something that most airlines have done. The same person, which is actually an airline employee, he does everything, she does everything. Just that's the atmosphere basically changes kind of. So it's not a bad ad at all. It's very nice. It went completely viral. I don't have any major issues with it. It's just that for a professional work, it could have pushed harder, is my opinion.
Yeah, but I think what is happening, if you look at all of the ads that we've discussed, from Pepsi to Urban Company to this one, that entire idea that we spoke about earlier of pandering being in the short term a far more lucrative way of collecting bonuses, because who knows what will happen in the long term.
Yeah.
And this is a question that keeps coming up in pretty much every discussion that I have with people on this podcast. And I keep pushing people on that, saying, who is thinking long term? Because if every 3 months your quarterly earnings are going to be discussed in the public, or your VC is going to ask you about these things, tell me the person who really cares for the long term. I don't think there is. That is my current way of thinking, that we would love to be deliberate.
Correct.
But I don't know if people
ironically, we actually think of the long term in quite a few other facets of our life. For instance, you get a short-term benefit when you run for 40 minutes a day, because you get your high, which is the day's high kind of stuff, which is very nice. I actually love that high every single day. That's the best kind of high that you can gain from every single day, basically. You get a short term. You don't see the outcome in the long term at all of running every day 5 kilometers at all. I can't see it at all. Maybe I will realize it when I'm 70 or 80. At that time, I might realize it. Or maybe I won't realize it at all. But that's the goal towards that I'm going. Even the way you choose what you eat, how much to eat, there is a short-term impact. There is a long-term impact that you cannot see at all. Similar in marketing, quite a few long-term impacts you cannot see. Somebody else would have done 10 years ago, you would still be reaping the benefit of it right now. They have no clue. You probably know, but you don't want to accept it at all, because they will get the credit, so you don't want to accept it. So I would say trust the long term. There is a long term. If you plan for it, it will work out. But don't short shift your short term efforts just because you don't have visibility to your long term. Trust there is a long term impact. There is a long term impact for everything, starting with climate. There is 100% long term impact for every single thing. Trust it. There is a long term. Trust it. Just because you cannot see it, you won't be around, it doesn't mean you shouldn't think about it. That would be really bad, which is like you eating anything and everything that comes to your mind. You just look at taste alone as your criteria and keep on eating everything. Nobody would do that, right? That you would trust the long term.
But I don't know. That's the point I was trying to make as well, right? So it's almost as though, I think Munger said that, right? Charlie Munger said that. Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. Right? And it's absolutely correct. When you think about it, it's a very basic rule.
Human psychology. Yeah.
Human psychology, right? And here the incentives are, pause, I click a button, everything is on demand, everything is on a click.
Right? Instant, yeah.
Exactly. So availability is no longer a problem at all, including, your promotion or hike that you would get if an ad became viral.
Yep.
In that scenario, and I don't even know whether the startup is going to lay me off or entire bottling plant is going to be closed and Pepsi will fire me. Let me make them.
So who cares? Yeah, exactly.
Right. So last question on advertising, which is one of your favorite topics. Hindi se kya problem hai bhai?
Kuch nahi hai. I've actually grown up in Bhopal, so I love Hindi. Absolutely no problem. The only problem I have is people having a very blinkered lens while sitting in, say, Gurgaon or South Bombay or Andheri, whatever it is, and then think Hindi chalega na pura India mein. That's the only problem. That's the only thing. So be Roman if you're in Rome, kind of stuff basically. And this becomes slightly more jaded when regions that don't particularly care for Hindi, and all they see is a Hindi caption written in English text. Just because you use English script, it doesn't become Hindi itself. I mean, English itself. It's still Hindi only. People don't understand at all. So there are states down south which don't care for Hindi at all because they can afford not to care for Hindi because they have their own language which is thriving and they learn English. So there is a good balance. And if they need to speak in Hindi, they can because Hindi has been ingrained for a very long time across all over India. So they know Hindi to the extent of managing their basic necessities when it comes to interacting with the government kind of stuff. So it's not as if they don't know; they know it basically. It's just that there is no reason for them to speak or engage in Hindi at all completely. For them, if you're trying to push a language which they don't particularly care, it just won't. You will actually be wasting your money. So why waste money at all is what I'm looking at basically. But having said that, I think OTT has changed the spectrum dramatically because people who have no understanding of Malayalam or Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, they are watching those movies with English subtitles. So they're actually enjoying it. Or they may probably change the audio to English Hindi. I mean, I usually prefer the actual audio with English subtitles, but there are many people who will actually prefer that language audio, which is the dubbed version that they look at it. And they are now being exposed to cultures which are in India for a longer time, but this is the first time they are looking at it afresh and they are amazed by what they see kind of stuff. So I think all the more reason you need to be conscious about your audience's language preferences. Don't need to pander to them by talking in their language itself, but if you're advertising in an English newspaper, at least bridge language to use karo, yaar, English hai, at least that use. Don't go to your side alone or their side alone. At least come to a middle point. Don't even come to a middle point. You just write Hindi caption with English text, which is pointless anyway.
Yeah, read it on my own terms is the overall agenda there.
Yeah.
But it's good fun. All right. So shifting to slightly more personal stuff, right? So Cassidy and Amartin's mindset are things that I think about all the while. So I see a little bit of, and that's my perception, obviously. On one hand, you're absolutely generous with your time, you're learning and, helping people. And this is not just my own experience. I've heard it from other people as well. How you don't really care about who is asking, but if you're in a position to help, you will help, right? And these are very junior people you probably don't need to really talk to. And therefore, it is not coming out of any vested interest in that. But on the other hand, you're also very strongly opinionated and your opinions are strongly held, which you would see, anybody would see in your comments as well. How do these two personalities coexist in your head? Have you thought about it?
Yeah, of course, I thought about it. So the latter part that you had mentioned, that I'm being actually very selfish there. So my only selfish reason is the more committed I am in my point of view or perspective, I am trying to find the other person's commitment in their perspective and point of view. Fight for your perspective, man, with logic and rational thinking. Not just you think like this, that's why you think like this. No ad hominem at all. There's no point at all. Bring up examples of why you believe so. Why? Not what. Why? Something like what has already been established. Why? What are the reasons? Bring your experience, bring your knowledge bank, everything, bring it. I'm selfish that I could get another perspective and finally say, wow, this is nice. I like it. Which still happens probably once a month. Somebody brings a completely new perspective, which is complete opposite to what I've written. And I am richer by that. Because as I said earlier, I'm in my shoes. I constantly want to wear other shoes and look at the world from their point of view. I can't do that because the thing is that I'm not them. But if they're taking the pains to explain here is why you need to think like this, I really like it actually. In fact, one of them recently explained. I forgot which ad it was. Probably the Urban Company ad or something like that. I didn't agree with the point of view, but it was a mind blowing point of view that he had put it across. I forgot which one it was. Even though I don't fully agree with that kind of logic, but it was fantastic. It was a very unique perspective that person put it. So I really like perspectives when it's argued really well with a why behind it, not just a what. What is just an opinion? Why is a perspective? That's what you explained to. I'm being completely selfish when I go after my perspective. I'm just waiting for somebody to put as much effort and conviction saying here is why you may not be, it's not just here is why you may be missing out on something, which is what I want to know actually. What am I missing out on? Please show it to me.
Don't be the person who wants to be right. Be the person who wants to get the right answer.
Possibly.
Which is basically, see, if you have a learning mindset, that is
Yeah.
essentially what you do this entire thing for. That's a very, very noble intent. I hadn't thought about it that way. All right, super. Thanks, Karthik, for bringing the person, the brand, and the personal brand and their collective perspectives onto the podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. So glad that we are doing this. We've been doing this for at least some 15 years, I think. We've been doing this for the longest time. Same kind of chat in real life here. I remember we had a chat in Jayanagar 9th block once, if I remember right. It was because I used to live in Jayanagar at the time.
Right.
And
long
met and from the time onwards, we've been doing exactly the same thing. And it's always enjoyable. Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. Thank you for listening to Brandwidth. Make sure you listen to all the other episodes on the playlist, please. And visit me at www.manuprasad.com.